there's a kind of a very, very kind of one root way of making movies in this culture. And that there seems to be sort of this mindset that it has to be this one thing, and this is the structure of it, and this is what has to happen to the characters. And I think that there's like in anything, like in any art form, there's the world opens up when you take that away.
Award-winning screenwriter and director Charlie Kaufman has had a complicated relationship with Hollywood. His relentless pursuit of unflinching honesty directly contrasts against Hollywood's interest in safe, commercially viable entertainment.
It's a circular problem in that, people who make movies see things that do well, and then they continue to make those things because they continue to do well, and then that becomes this sort of cycle, and everything else becomes excluded from that.
Even though his films are produced by independent companies, Kaufman's films do not embody the typical indie sensibility and aesthetics. Yet despite the constant rejections and box office disappointments, Kaufman has carved a holistic filmography that is uniquely idiosyncratic, and their characteristics can only be described as Kaufmanisms. In a critique of Hollywood's portrayal of bodies, Laura Mulvey explains, "Cinema seems to have evolved a particular illusion of reality in which this contradiction between libido and ego has found a beautiful complementary fantasy world. The male protagonist is free to command the stage, a stage's spatial illusion in which he articulates the look and creates the action." While Hollywood aesthetics and narrative continually eroticize femininity for the pleasure of male spectators, masculinity is persistently framed through idealized power fantasy. The perverse desire for idealization further infects Hollywood's depiction of flawed male characters. Casablanca's Rick Blaine is undeniably a broken man haunted by his past, yet he is still a suave talker with an arsenal of one-liners and seduces with ease. In contrast, Kaufman's protagonists are misanthropic, plagued by catastrophic anxiety and deep loneliness. His protagonists are clear author self-inserts, but what keeps the characters from pure power fantasy is Kaufman's unflinching honesty. His characters aren't highbrow businessmen in suits, they're people like this, with faces like this. Their occupations typically neglected by most media: a low-level office worker, a motivational customer service speaker, and a high school janitor. In the eyes of Kaufman, hyper-specific personal stories are synecdoches for the universal experience.
You have struggled into existence and are now slipping silently out of it. This is everyone's experience, every single one.
Instead of grandiose external conflicts determining the fate of the world, Kaufman's characters suffer from their internal conflicts, manifesting in existential crisis. Their inability to progress inadvertently causing external conflicts.
I have to go find my daughter.
Your daughter's right here.
My real daughter.
Excuse me?
No, my first daughter, Olive. I have to go find her.
Please, don't do this to us!
In Synecdoche, New York, Caden's obsession with his theater piece results in ignoring the world around him. The film's dramatic irony lies in Caden's want to make something objective and truthful. But like many Kaufman characters, Caden's inability to escape his own perspective results in the truth of his play filtered through Caden's obsession with death. The film's absurdist verisimilitude, diegetically motivated by both Caden's eventual loss of control of his own play and the human experience of memory as time uncontrollably passes by. Best illustrated in the film's opening scene, a seemingly mundane breakfast routine is in actuality a montage of months passing by with each cut. The intense subjectivity is further reflected in the film's lack of a traditional three-act structure and clear systems of cause and effect, instead using a stream of conscious structure to both create sympathy for Caden's suffering but also to trap the audience.
I don't think there's any distinction between structure and story. I think that they're two parts of the same thing.
Inability to escape one's own limited perspective is taken to the ultimate extreme in I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Its superficial plot of a woman meeting her boyfriend's parents for the first time is revealed to be a deluded fantasy to distract from Jake's suicidal thoughts. But instead of indulging in the well-worn "it was all a dream" cliche, the film is entirely focalized to the fictional girlfriend's perspective. The revelation of this fantasy inverts the woman's criticisms of Jake to be a projection of his self-hatred. He despised himself so much that he couldn't tell his own story through his own perspective. For Kaufman, the functions of story are opportunities to reveal character, and those characters aren't gods or superheroes or wealthy businessmen, they're people. Predating the post-COVID explosion of metamodernism, Kaufman is perhaps most well known for his meta-narratives and commentary, most notably 2002's Adaptation. Following the success of Being John Malkovich, Kaufman was approached to write the recently optioned novel by acclaimed author Susan Orlean, The Orchid Thief. Kaufman accepted, fearing that rejecting the offer would lead back to his customer service days, but Kaufman became increasingly frustrated in his inability to create a compelling adaptation. So in classic Kaufman fashion, he wrote a highly personal film about screenwriter Charlie Kaufman Kaufman and his failed attempt to adapt Susan Orlean's The Orchid Thief. The film acts as a frustrated meditation on the nature of writing, as fictional Kaufman is plagued by the want for deeply intellectual and richly philosophical stories, but cannot overcome the studio's market demands and his own catastrophic thinking. This is contrasted by Kaufman's equally fictional brother, a happy-go-lucky identical twin that pursues screenwriting after a cliched epiphany. Donald seeks to write an entertaining genre film heavily drawing from Robert McKee's rigid screenwriting techniques that reduces creativity to a near mathematical equation. Donald embodies Hollywood's sensationalist perspective of cinema of attractions, a term originally coined by Tom Gunning in observing cinema's exhibitionist confrontation rather than diegetic absorption. Erland Larvik extrapolates further. This unapologetic exhibitionism is commonly connected to film's viewing context: fairgrounds, public parks, vaudeville theaters. Narrative cinema, by contrast, was modeled on legitimate theater. This dominating obsession with spectacle over narrative persistently undermines Kaufman's want for intellectualism, but instead of creating a clear black and white critique of Hollywood's aversion to unconventional ideas and character-centric narratives, the irony of adaptation lies in Kaufman's inertia of writer's block. He feels he is unable to create a deep and enlightening story, and when he does get an epiphany, he later criticizes the notion as
self-indulgent, it's narcissistic, it's solipsistic, it's pathetic. I'm pathetic, I'm fat and pathetic.
a notion that could apply to the film itself, as it lacks any conclusion to the philosophical conflict, instead divulging into the very sensationalism Kaufman criticized. As it is implied, Donald finished the screenplay drawing from McKee's advice.
Wow them in the end. You got hit.
A similar paradoxical resentment and appreciation of Hollywood sensationalism is found in the fake Robert Zemeckis film In I'm Thinking of Ending Things, where Jake finds comfort in the romanticization of romance as literal escape from his suicidal thoughts. This paradox of attraction and repulsion to Hollywoodisms infects their film's many intertextual references with melancholy, as they are reminders of how Jake filled his lonely life with media to both suppress and entertain his self-destruction.
Even fake, crappy movie ideas want to live. Like, they grow in your brain.
Whilst contemporary media is obsessed with the indulgent references and derivative inspiration, I'm Thinking of Ending Things uses intertextuality as a narrative device to explore the protagonist's mental state. In place of healthy friendships, family, and relationships, Jake filled his empty life with media. Like his characters, Kaufman's meta-narratives are an Ouroboros that consumes all.
I'm Ouroboros.
I don't know what that word means.
But Kaufman doesn't provide an answer to this plight, instead depicting the reality of living in a media-dominated culture. Though beginning his career as purely a screenwriter, all of Kaufman's films are stylistically atypical to the classic Hollywood style. As essayist David Warwell notes, the Hollywood film strives to conceal its artifice through techniques of continuity and invisible storytelling. Further adding, Hollywood cinema has been made stringently uniform by its dependence upon a specific economic mode of film production and consumption. Despite this, the directors of Kaufman's scripts visualized his ideas through their own idiosyncratic voices. Both being John Malkovich and Adaptation were helmed by then up-and-comer Spike Jonze. Drawing from his background in lo-fi music videos and the Jackass series, Jonze grounded Kaufman's absurdism in a cinema verite aesthetic. Instead of fancy dollies and precise compositions, Jonze opted for handheld immediacy with simple setups and naturalistic lighting that humanized the characters, experimenting with temporal jump cuts to communicate character psychology, a similar sentimentality reflected in French auteur Michel Gondry. Drawing from his own music video career to create a mix of imperfect practical effects, overexposed and out-of-focus images that holistically form a bittersweet fleeting memory. These humanist styles contrast against Kaufman's own directorial work. Both Synecdoche, New York and I Am Thinking of Ending Things revel in diegetically motivated artifice. The Dogville-esque missing mise-en-scene indicative of Caden's ever-growing play and the conventional psychological horror visuals reflecting Jake's media obsession. Anomalisa is the ironic anomaly of Kaufman's career, co-directing the film alongside Moral Oral creator Duke Johnson. Kaufman adapted his three-person radio play into a stop-motion animation, the imperfection and repetition of puppets acting as a visual manifestation of the protagonist's Fagoli delusion.
So we could maybe go out for a walk and talk or something?
Yes. So I'll see you after?
Of course. I think that movies lie a lot, and maybe I'm trying not to lie in some of these things by saying that I am lying, you know?
Kaufman's writing and attitude towards Hollywood may feel overly cynical and depressive, but Kaufman isn't devoid of hope.
Say who you are. Really say it in your life and in your work. Tell someone out there who is lost, someone not yet born, someone who won't be born for 500 years. Your writing will be a record of your time. It can't help but be. But more importantly, if you're honest about who you are, you'll help that person be less lonely in their world.